out for us. More and more cases of violence against women has been women, the girl child, even the aged too, some were not spared, and of course, very young babies. And these days it's taking another dimension of also including boys, which is very sad. So to reduce the cases of violence against women, Nigeria in 2006 adopted a framework and plan of action for the national gender policy. Consequently, the federal and state governments adopted several legislative policy instruments, which to use to contain this heinous crime against humanity. And I think that's what we are trying to do today as we take a look at the topic. It says Orange Nigeria. I hope I can see a lot of you because of the system that I'm using, but I do hope that all of us are all oranged up, as it were. And it says a stakeholders appraisal of the journey to end gender-based violence in Nigeria. Before we go any further, I think we should hear from the country vice president, my sister, Rhoda Towden, who would give us, I'm sure, a welcome remark to put in perspective what we intend to speak to today. So at this point, I'd like to invite my sister, Rhoda Prevail Towden, to please give her opening remarks.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
My name is Nime Aguma. I'm the the immediate past country vice president of Fida, and I'm going to represent our country president, Rhoda Towden Moore. She's unavoidably absent. She sent me her opening remarks this morning and asked me to represent her. She's bereaved and she renders her apologies. So I'll go on to read the opening remarks as written by CVP Rhoda Towden Moore. Your Excellency, the wife of the Executive Governor of Ekiti State, Erelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi, Your Excellency, wife of the Executive Governor of Rivers State and Judge of the High Court of Rivers State, Honorable Justice Eberechi Suzette Nyesom Wike, the Amiable Deputy Commissioner of Police, First Gender Coordinator, Advisor to the IGP, Margaret Ochala, our partner, Olufunke Baruwa, Program Officer, Gender, Racial and Ethnic Justice, Ford Foundation, West Africa, our partner, sister and friend of Fida Nigeria, Mrs. Moji Makanjola, founder of ISMFPH, who is also the moderator of this program. Milords present, members of the Board of Trustees, National Executive Committee members, led by our own very Mrs. Amina Agbaje, Deputy Country Vice President, Fida, Nigeria. Very senior members of Fida Nigeria, chairpersons, executive members, great Fidans, esteemed participants, and let me specially recognize all the he's for she's in this program. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar with the theme, Orange Nigeria, a stakeholders appraisal of the journey to end gender-based violence in Nigeria. This webinar is organized by Fida Nigeria to commemorate the 16 days of activism and celebrate the achievements so far. For indeed, we're not where we used to be. To this end, Fida Nigeria is partnering with some seasoned personalities to share their experiences in combating gender-based violence, to learn and forge a way forward. This year's theme of the 16 days of activism entreats us to fund, respond, prevent, and collect. Fida Nigeria has been funding and has also been funded by donors to respond to cases of gender-based violence. We were instrumental to the passage of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act 2015, which is the extent and benchmark law in prosecuting cases of violence in Nigeria. And we have also been actively involved in advocating for the adoption of the law in all states of the Federation. So far, 18 states have adopted the law. Also, we have supported NAPTIP during the COVID period to provide rapid response to cases of GBV and make arrests. We have recommended that the police and NAPTIP make judicious use of the protection order where applicable in the VAP laws of the state to remove perpetrators from the homes in cases of spousal abuse and not just look for shelters for victims. Furthermore, Fida Nigeria secured funding from partners to provide free legal representation, psychosocial support, counseling services, and temporary shelters, as well as sensitize and train paralegals on the provisions of the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act 2015 to address incidents of GBV in the communities in the FCT and some states. Fida has been involved in media sensitization programs on gender-based violence and how to access justice. Fida has been leading the advocacy for the establishment of sexual assault referral centers in all states, and we are glad to report several SARCs have been established and even manned by Fida members. Examples are Ekiti and Akwa Ibom states. Going forward, there is also a need to collect and store data while addressing GBV. This has been one of our major challenges. We need to track the progress being made, or if there are new trends of violence, and ways to develop new strategies to address the same. This record is necessary when soliciting for support from international partners, and also a tool to advocate to the government for better structures and legislations to address GBV in Nigeria. Today is remarkable as Fida Nigeria will launch its data collection portal. Without further ado, I want to appreciate our honorable erudite and eloquent guests, who are no strangers to us, for finding time out of their busy schedules to join in this discussion and share experiences on their journey to end gender-based violence. I have no doubt that we will all learn and be inspired. I implore all participants to participate and engage fully. Welcome once again, and thank you for being on this platform. God bless you.
Thank you again for representing very well the country vice president, Rhoda Towden, who is unfortunately bereaved. And I know that as we speak, she's in Plateau to bury the dead. May the soul of the dead rest in perfect peace. And yeah, as we continue, I like the fact that the first speaker is one that is going to give us a perspective into sustainability in terms of gender-based violence. For a lot of people in the gender equity movement, I know that Her Excellency, the wife of the executive governor of Ekiti State, Erelu Bisi Adeleye Fayemi, she's not new to us. But most importantly is the fact that position or office has not changed who this woman is. I think I met her more than 20 years back, and she has not for one moment defaulted from pursuing equity, gender equity amongst it. And that's why Ekiti State has become the state now to benchmark for all that is being done and that is possible to reduce, to ensure that gender-based violence is reduced, and more than anything else, perpetrators don't have any safe haven there. Your Excellency, I salute you, my sister. But before you come on, Your Excellency, I'd just like to give a small background of just a little of what Ekiti State has been able to put in place, which is so important and why she should lead this discussion today. Ekiti State passed a law on gender-based violence, one of the states with laws against gender-based violence in Nigeria. The law recognizes that gender-based violence includes economic abuse, which it defines as the denial of funds, refusal to contribute financially to family upkeep, and denial of food and basic needs, among others. Ekiti State is very holistic. It also established a gender-based violence fund to provide, among others, basic material support for victims. Such victims and their dependents may receive free shelter and vocational training. That is so wholesome and so encompassing for us to treat these menace that we have to deal with gender-based violence. Well, since we have the authority in-house, I would leave the floor for my sister, Her Excellency Irelu Bisi. Please, you have the floor and welcome.
Thank you very much, Auntie Moji, for that very graceful introduction. I acknowledge the president of Fida, my dear sister, Honorable Rhoda Theoden. I'm very sorry for your loss. May the soul of the dearly departed rest in peace. Your Excellency, the First Lady of Rivers State, my sister and colleague, the Honorable Justice Suzette Wike. Good afternoon, Madam. All the Fida leadership who are on the webinar, all the development partners who are here, my sister Funke Barua from the Ford Foundation, the few gentlemen who are here with us, good afternoon to you all. It gives me great pleasure to be here to have a conversation with you about gender-based violence and what it is we are doing in Ekiti State to address this issue. I have been speaking on many webinars over the past couple of months, as well as a number of conferences over the past couple of days. So if you have heard me speak about these issues, please forgive me if I'm about to bore you all over again, or if I sound like a broken record going over the same things again. You need to bear with me because this is 25 years after the Beijing conference. And Auntie Moji was struggling to recall when we first met. It was at the Beijing conference. That was 25 years ago. I attended this conference as a young woman, full of hopes and dreams for the future. And women and gender-based violence or violence against women, as we know it within the women's movement, was one of the issues we were addressing in the Beijing Platform for Action. So you can imagine my dismay 25 years down the line. I am still giving talk after talk on violence against women. But that's the world we live in. Those are the realities we face now. But I'm an eternal optimist, as I said at a meeting earlier today. I always believe that my glass is half full instead of being half empty. And so I'm pleased that in the state where where I live and where my husband comes from and where I come from, we have been able to do something to mitigate the impact of gender-based violence on women and girls. Because of my background in development and the women's movement, there were a lot of expectations that I'll bring back some of this to have a bearing on the lives of women and children and the community at large in Ekiti State. I've always been one who has been a firm believer in policy frameworks, because I believe if you have those in place, then you can have tools through which you can hold leaders accountable. And that is why I have spent a lot of my time as the First Lady of Ekiti State trying to ensure that we have legal and policy frameworks in place. I did quite a bit of that during my husband's first term from 2010 to 2014, and now during his second term, 2018 to 2022. We have recorded significant successes, not just in the legal and policy framework space, but in other areas as well. And so what I'd like to share with you is some of the lessons that I've learned and some of the challenges that we've faced and ways in which we've addressed them. So first of all, the issue of legal and policy frameworks, as I've just said, is absolutely critical. Ekiti State has about the most robust policy and legal frameworks we have in Nigeria to address gender equality and women's rights. And this is mostly because we have political will in the state that understands the need to place women at the center of any development programs or strategies. But with these legal and policy frameworks also comes the responsibility to ensure that they do not remain on paper. So when it comes to GBV, we have the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which we added on to our own GBV law of 2011, because it actually passed our own GBV law in Ekiti State as far back as 2011. So in 2019, we merged it with the VAP Act, and so we have our own GBV law in Ekiti State. That then brings with it the responsibility of ensuring that it doesn't remain on paper and that it's implemented in the fullest of terms possible. And so with this with this GBV law in place, we decided that it was important to have a strong coordinating mechanism. And this coordinating mechanism is something that exists at federal level and is supposed to exist at state level as well. A number of states have different models. I think states would work with what suits them best. From what we have found out in Ekiti, it's important to have a coordinating mechanism that brings on board different sectors, that is multi-sectoral. And so we have the Office of the Attorney General, the Chief Judge, the Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, the Ministry of Health, Education, Local Government, Information. They are all part of this coordinating mechanism that we have in Ekiti State. And we also have a strong contingent of civil society partners, and Fida is one of those. I chair this coordinating mechanism, and we have structured our work in such a way that every single agency that is part of that coordinating mechanism has a function, has a role, and they have leadership that they are meant to exercise. And we also ensure that they bring resources to the table as well. And as I said at the ROLAC conference that I've just come from, every time it's budgeting, when the budgeting cycle begins, I keep my ear to the ground and I know when the budgets are being prepared. And so I place very polite but persistent calls to all the commissioners in the ministries, Ministry of Health, Women Affairs, and the Attorney General's Office, Education, and so on, asking, I hope you put in something for GBV, because we are all responsible for funding this work together. Moving on from the issue of having an effective coordinating mechanism is the critical importance of treatment, care, and protection for GBV survivors. Now, any woman or child or girl who has been a victim of gender-based violence remains a victim unless they can be appropriately cared for, unless certain protection mechanisms are put in place. That is when they can then move from being victims to survivors. And what we generally understand needs to be in place is things like, at the very least, to have a shelter where you can place women and their children when they're in distress. To at least have a sexual assault referral center where victims of sexual violence can be attended to promptly and receive the psychosocial support that they need in the short, medium, and long term. In Nigeria, we have currently 29 sexual assault referral centers, but these 29 SARCs are located in only 17 states, which means we have quite a number of states in the country who don't have at least one sexual assault referral center. And this is a service that we need in almost every local government in the country. And so that remains a big issue that we need to come back to. Following on from the need to provide immediate support, a one-stop arena of, array of services to GBV survivors, and also shelter should they require it, is the need to ensure that women can build their lives back. And that is why, as part of our own GBV law in Ekiti State, we have a survivors fund, which enables survivors rebuild their lives so they're able to get themselves accommodation. They can start a small business, or they can go back to school should they desire to. We believe if we do not provide this full range of services for survivors of violence, we are not fulfilling our obligations and responsibilities as a state. Another lesson that we've learned is the critical importance of community engagement, and that's not anything strange to members of Fida, because many of you have been at the forefront of this in our communities. I'm very proud of Fida Ekiti, for example. They are absolutely marvelous, and we couldn't have done the work that we do in the state around GBV without the full and active support of both Fida as an organization as well as members of Fida. Now, in terms of community engagement, our political leaders, religious leaders, traditional rulers, and other opinion leaders on the community are usually the gatekeepers. They are the ones who shape attitudes and beliefs. They are the ones who act as the custodians of patriarchal norms and values, which make it extremely difficult for us to get a better deal for women. Now, if we do not engage them effectively, these are the agents who sabotage our efforts at community level. We all saw what happened earlier on this week with a domestic violence case turned into an issue that was reconciled or resolved within 24 hours, simply because an elder had said so. And these are the ways in which our work continues to be undermined. So we all need to keep investing in this arena of community engagement and working with all these leaders to change them from saboteurs of our work into allies. Another area that we need to pay attention to is education for reorientation. And I'm using education here in the most holistic sense of the word possible. I'm talking about education in schools, right from primary school to secondary school to tertiary institutions. A lot of us here who are teachers, as well as being lawyers, teachers, parents, grandparents, you'll be horrified to learn about what is happening in our schools these days. Not just in the universities, in the secondary schools, even in the primary schools. And so we need to invest a lot of work in ensuring that the educational system is fully on board with all these issues we are talking about. We have to have a different kind of curriculum in our schools. We also have to have a different way of the teachers, of the educational authorities engaging with teachers to realize the responsibilities. In Ekiti State, we have told our teachers, if our girls are violated in your schools, we will hold you responsible. We found out, for example, that our girls are vulnerable. Right from when they step out of their homes, the Okada rider who takes them to school, the security officer at the school gate, male teachers in their school or their male colleagues, our girls are vulnerable at every single point. 25 years ago at the Beijing conference, people like me were advocating for the girl child as the 12th critical area of concern. So that's the area that African feminists were concerned about. 25 years later, girls are going to school. So we've won that debate about girls going to school. But we are struggling to keep our girls in school because of the serious nature of the sexual exploitations they face all around. Another area, before I close on the issue of the lessons that we've learned, another area of concern that I think we need to pay attention to is the way in which women are empowered, or the need for women to be empowered. The empowerment of women is unfinished business. A significant number of Nigerian women are still extremely poor, still lack access to basic resources such as land and capital, and they still lack economic empowerment and a decent livelihood. And if a woman is disempowered herself, she is not likely to be able to raise children, particularly girls, for them to be empowered. She's likely to give in if her husband or other family members insist that they have to give their daughter away in marriage at an early age. And if a girl who is still a child gets from a poor background, gets married at the age of 12 and 13 and starts having children, then these children will end up on the streets, selling bread, hawking water, and they too will get pregnant at the same age. And then we continue a cycle of what we know as generational poverty. So the empowerment of women is still unfinished business. We need to invest in any way we can to ensure that we raise the status of women across board, so that the more empowered women are, the more chances their daughters will have in life, and the more we are able to break the cycle of violence. Last but not least, the area I'd like to draw attention to is partnerships, networks, and coalition building. And that is why this relationship with Fida is extremely important. In Ekiti State, we consider GBV coordinating mechanism as one whole coalition against GBV in the state. But even within that, the non-governmental organizations who are part of that GBV coordinating mechanism also have their own network that they've put together. And this is extremely important because from the experience that we had in Ekiti, between 2014 to 2018, after we left in 2014, the political will to drive GBV responses was not there. And so a lot of the government responses, or a lot of the things that were supposed to come from the government did not come. There were no resources. The GBV Management Committee did not meet. There was no interest whatsoever. But it was the non-governmental organizations, like the Federation of Women Lawyers, for example, who kept everything on track. They were the ones who kept things going. And so that is why I want us to pay attention to all these networks and movements that we have to ensure that they continue to be sustainable and they can continue to be effective partners and stakeholders in what we are trying to do. Last but not least, I'd like to challenge you as Fida members. Sometime in 2011, I was in my office in Ekiti, as first lady back then, our first term, when a team of Fida lawyers came to see me about the case of a 13-year-old girl. This 13-year-old girl was pregnant. She had been raped well, the initial story we heard was that she had been raped by a policeman. It turned out that not only had she been raped by this policeman, there were 2 other men involved as well. So they brought the case of this girl to me. And as they were leaving, they said something to me. They said, "Your Excellency, we know we have come to the right place." And since then, I've thought about what that means, being in the right place. What does it mean? So Fida, I'd like to challenge you. Do you have enough passion as members of this great organization? Are you willing to use your leverage, the leverage you have with the use of the law at different levels? Are you angry enough? Because if you are not angry enough, you cannot effect change. I'm not talking about the kind of anger that makes you want to go out and kill someone, but the kind of anger that makes you wake up in the morning and want to go out and change something for good. Do you have enough courage? A lot of the work that we do is very dangerous. You need a lot of courage. You are going to be faced with many powers and principalities. There are people who have been doing things the same way over and over and think no one can come and tell them what to do. You are dealing with fathers who are committing incest with their daughters or their nieces. So you need a lot of courage to stand up to certain entities. Do you have this courage? And do you have enough energy? It's very easy to get tired. It's very easy to get burnt out and give up. But I'd like to encourage you, always be in the right place because we need this great organization. I don't know where we would be as a Nigerian women's movement and as an African women's movement without Fida. So once again, thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts with you. And I look forward to an ongoing relationship with you in my state and across the country. God bless.
Thank you, Excellency. I think Auntie Moji has network issues. I can't hear. We are most grateful for your kind words to Fida. We have been challenged. We have been enlightened about the work in Ekiti. And indeed, we know that this journey to end violence against women continues and we are in for it all. So thank you so much, Your Excellency. I'm still hoping Auntie Moji can come in. I think she still has, she hasn't been able to come back in. So I think I'll just progress to call and invite the next speaker. She's someone personally known to me because she is my governor's wife. And also someone I've known for so many years, even before she became the governor's wife and a judge of our high court. I can tell you she's passionate about the issues of women. she takes it personal to hear anything about violence against a child or woman. She runs an NGO that speaks against unethical behavior in our dear state, Rivers State. Sitting as a judge of the Rivers State High Court, we have seen the passion she has put in to the work to end violence against women. Not only is she just passionate, she's a Fida member. She has also served in the executive committee of Fida Rivers some years back. And so we know that she's speaking as an insider and someone that has stood by this fight for a long time. May I humbly yield the floor to Your Excellency, Honorable Justice Suzette Eberechi.
Okay, thank you very much. I should thank Fida for this invitation and this opportunity to allow me share my thoughts. But before I go on, let me recognize the president of Fida, Nigeria, Mrs. Theoden, and of course, we use this opportunity still to commiserate with her for her loss, and I pray that God will, comfort her and her family at this period. I recognize the presence of Her Excellency Erelu Bisi Fayemi, and let me use this opportunity to commend you on the work that you have done so far in your state. The way you spoke, it is obvious you have been in this business for a very long time, and of course, I encourage you, as well as every other state governor's wife and every NGO in the work of progressing the status of women and, of course, their welfare. I recognize the Deputy Commissioner of Police, First Gender Coordination, Margaret Ochala, all the resource persons, members of FIDA, the Board of Trustees, as well as Mrs. Amina Agbaje. I also recognize the state chairpersons of FIDA, in all the different branches, and of course, all the participants that are here on this platform. So my invitation here is to speak about the court's responses to gender-based violence. But before I go into that, I would like to explain in a short way, as possible as I can, what I consider as gender-based violence. And I want to say that is anything that is perpetrated on a person, that is dehumanizing, that is an infraction of the person's or the victim's human rights, that just prevents the person from freely expressing himself or herself, because we have to realize that gender-based violence is not only against women, even men too can be victims. And it prevents the person from making free choices and to freely associate, and it's threatening sometimes even to life itself. It affects the human dignity of the person, and is intended to reduce the person's self-esteem, the self-worth, and the confidence of the person. It may rob the person of seeing any meaning in life. So it's also emotional too. And it leads to depressive and suicidal tendencies, and in fact to suicide itself. Gender-based violence is a phenomenon deeply rooted in gender inequality, and it continues to be one of the most common human rights violations within all societies in the world. It is directed against the person simply because of their gender and nothing else. Both women and men, as I've said before, experience this, and the majority of them are women and girls. We have to realize that there are different kinds of gender-based violence. Some of them can be physical, and an example I can give is that of indecent assault, defilement, rape, battery, and even some widowhood practices, as some of us may, be aware of in our different customary laws. There's also female genital mutilation, and at this point, I think it would be a good time to make a reference to our Child's Rights Act of 2003. And I want to say that I was really, really alarmed to notice that there is a missing section in that Child Rights Act. Section 25 should have read, and I will read now. Sub 1. No person shall cause a female child to be subjected to female genital mutilation. And 2. A person who directly or indirectly causes a female child to be subjected to female genital mutilation commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of 50,000 naira or imprisonment for a term of 1 year or both. This part I have read is from the Child Rights Law, the Amendment Law of Rivers State, and we had to include that because we see the need not to encourage that, because that is physical violence against our girls, who of course will turn out to be women in future. And I want to believe that this section was excluded from the Child Rights Act, maybe because of different traditional customs and the fact that it goes against maybe some of our religious customs too. But if we're talking about violence against women and girls, this is something that really should have been included in that law. And I want to say, if we ever get to that point where that law is reviewed or amended, it should be included because this is a very great violence against women. So now I will go back to the different kinds of gender-based violence. There's also the economic aspect. That's the second point that we raised there. And for this, I can refer to cases of preventing the female child or even the widow from inheriting from a deceased parent or husband. Also, in that instance, I'm going to refer to the case of Ukeje and Ukeje. It's a Supreme Court case that was decided in the year 2014. And in that instance, it's funny because the parties happen to be the mother or the wife of the deceased and her son, who applied for letters of administration to administer the estate of their deceased father and husband. And the other party is or was the daughter of the deceased. And she noticed that they were already in the process of acquiring letters of administration, and then she made a protest. She filed a suit in court challenging that and insisting that she also had a right to inherit from her father's estate. And of course, the matter was heard in the Lagos division of the High Court there, and the challenger there, who is also the daughter, actually got judgment, but that judgment was overturned at the Court of Appeal, and the case went on to the court, to the Supreme Court, that upheld the decision of the lower court, which is the High Court, and allowed for a daughter to take part in the sharing of her father's estate. Now, the point I want to make here is that when we consider our customary laws and even the Islamic laws, and I know that the Islamic law is structured in the sense that everybody has a share in the estate of a deceased father or husband. But I would say that the females do not get as much as the male. And I want to, of course, make a case for equality in this respect, because we shouldn't put one child above or prefer one child or even add any value to one child over another. So now, in this instance, if a matter is taken to the customary courts, or I want to suspect also the Sharia courts, it's possible that the case will go according to the laws that are prevalent there, despite this law, or I'm sorry, this decision in Ukeje and Ukeje. In other words, because these customary laws are still prevalent and they're still existing, nothing much can be done about them. The court will always rule based on its customs. And if imagining that the person who is, how will I say now, that is not happy about that decision does nothing about it, there's nothing that can come out of that court process except the person goes on appeal. And then, of course, the law in Ukeje and Ukeje, or the decision there, will prevail. So it means that at that lower level where people are litigating in customary court or Sharia courts, there's nothing that they can do. They cannot benefit from this Ukeje and Ukeje decision. And so that's a minus. Also, we have men preventing women from working outside home or engaging in any employment or career. That is a violence that I will how will I say, grade as economic violence. Also, when we don't allow a girl child have the kind of education that she should have, especially in comparison with the male child at home. It is a problem because it makes for inequalities in the family. There's also lack of sponsorship in acquiring skills also, because that is like Her Excellency mentioned, a woman who is educated, who has skills, is one who can fend for herself and can take care of her personal and other needs that may be, in her family and also in the society where she abides. And of course, we know that when a woman is not educated, when she's not empowered, there's nothing really she can do to help herself or even help any situation that is around her. There's also the lack of adequate financial provisions for domestic upkeep. That I also term to be an economic violence against women at home. When you have someone who, is in a position in a marriage and she doesn't get the kind of financial support that she needs to run the family, that causes problems. And I want to say these are some of the means that men use to keep women in check and under their control. Another kind of violence I would categorize here will be psychological and emotional violence. Sometimes we don't really think about the impact of some of these kind of violence or actions that are meted to the victims. They are not very obvious, they're not all in our faces, but then they do a lot of harm and they can damage a person. Such actions like harsh words, or threatening words, abuses, degrading attitudes, putting down somebody, whether it's a spouse or a daughter, and just meting out demeaning treatments to them. That is, in my estimation, a form of violence against women. And these are not things that are apparent. They're not what we talk about when we talk about violence. We just go straight to that physical part. And all these should be considered. Thankfully, we have the Violence Against Persons Act of 2015, and we are hoping and praying that this should be adopted by all the states in Nigeria. We also have the social aspect, and that would be the fourth category I want to talk about. And this, I will say, is discrimination against women or even men or their capacity, such as taking a suspect on bail. When somebody is arrested and he needs to provide a surety to be taken out on bail, especially when it comes to the police stations. It has been heard in the past, and I have experienced that women are not allowed to take suspects on bail. And the reason they provide for that is the fact that, you cannot hold a man, for example, you cannot bring him and, produce him at the time when he is expected to come to the police station. And so women are deprived of that privilege that they would have had to take persons on bail. And I think that is very demeaning. It is something that can be very, it can cause some depression for women. It's oppressive and it should not be allowed. It's a police practice, it is not a law. And I'm hoping that, things are getting better and that this particular aspect of the practice is being discouraged and hopefully stopped. There's also the how will I say now, circumstances where women are not allowed to testify in courts in cases that come before the customary courts, and that's because the law or their custom says that women cannot give evidence or talk about traditional practices or customary law, and that is not all right. And the case in point I will mention will be the case of Okeke and Wingele. It's a court of appeal decision. And of course, this tells you that, all our courts in Nigeria are all orange courts. And we, of course, do our best as judicial officers to uphold the rights of women as well as every other person who appears before the court. In that case, it was held that being a female of a female gender does not render the evidence of a witness inadmissible and or not credible with regard to customary law. So that, I would say, is a success and achievement that the courts have come up with in holding up the rights of the women. Of course, I've also mentioned the laws of inheritance, customarily between the male and female offspring, and it is still prevalent in our customary courts. It is part of our customs. And some of those customs, of course, we know they're obsolete, they're oppressive, they're discriminatory, excuse me, they should be done away with. Unless it is challenged successfully, the court will deal with only what is presented before it, as I've already said. And like I said, the Violence Against Persons Act 2015 is a very good legislation that has, put all this, considered all of this and takes cognizance of all these different issues. And it has clearly outlawed some of these instances of discrimination and that are inconsistent, of course, with Chapter 4 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, and or any kind of practice that is repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience. So we'll say we have some successes there. So it is one thing to speak of gender-based violence, and is yet another to get victims to access remedies against them. And I think that there are some points I need to mention here that militates against people accessing justice. First of all, you have to be aware of something before you can take advantage of it. So we have not a total lack of awareness, but an abysmal level of awareness of rights of women in this instance. People must first be informed before they can take advantage of these laws. They have to know that they exist before they can know how to, approach the courts or go about, enforcing their rights. We have decided cases and precedents that can guide courts and determine different matters that are similar in their facts that come before them. And a case in point I will mention here will be R versus Princeville. It's a 1963 case. It was reported in 1963, Northern Region of Nigerian Law Report, page 54. And in that case, it talked principally about the issue of bigamy. What happened is there is a man, or was a man, who was married under the marriage ordinance at that time, now the Marriage Act. And then he conducted another Islamic law marriage after that first marriage, and that marriage was still subsisting. And so the court found the how will I say now, the accused person at that time, because that's what they were called at that time, guilty. And it is a crime, really, in our laws, but women are not even aware of this. And of course, the penalty for that is 7 years imprisonment. And that is a very big, how will I say, very heavy penalty. It tells you how much the law frowns on bigamy. But look at today, we have people marrying under the act and conducting another marriage still under the act, and nothing happens. So it's either women are ignorant and they don't know what to do about that, or maybe they just decide to sleep over their rights because they would rather abide than to contend. So women need to be aware. And I want to say that all governments at different levels have a very big role to play in this respect, as well as non-governmental organizations and other community-based organizations. People need to be aware that these laws, are existing, and if they don't know, they cannot take advantage of it, as I've already said. So in that instance, of course, if you conduct a marriage under the customary law, which is a polygamous marriage, of course, you're allowed to marry any number of women as the man sees fit. But when you conduct one under the act, you must not, unless that marriage is extinguished, you cannot conduct another valid marriage, whether under customary law or under the act. So women need to be aware of that. Another issue I will talk about here will be the economic constraints that women have. A lot of women are not as empowered as men are. They don't have the kind of resources men have. Some of them are not even educated, like we've already said. And so litigation is an issue for some of these women. It is not inexpensive, and it comes with its ups and downs. And sometimes you go through the process and you might not even get what it is that you would have hoped that you would have achieved. Some people have these cases that drag on for a long time and they come out even more embittered than they would have been had they not even entered into the process of litigation. So not everyone can conveniently undertake it. And it's also, discourages victims to pursue their rights when they are infringed upon. This is all the more reason why we have to have awareness, from all the, as I've said, levels of government and NGOs. People should know that some of these public parastatals or ministries, departments, agencies, and NGOs, such as the Public Defender and the Ministry of Justice, the Legal Rights Aid, and then even active Fida branches, and also the NBA, conduct or offer pro bono services as far as, helping or assisting people, to express their rights, to litigate or approach the courts to have their rights, how will I say, to have their rights reinstated, I would say, when they are entrenched, excuse me, when they are impugned on. So we also have the gender desk in the Nigeria Police, which is a very good development. I have to commend the police for that. And of course, we say the Nigeria Police first, but it has been recently suggested that it should be called the Police Service, Nigeria Police Service, in the sense that, the police people, police personnel, officers should be in the mindset, of the fact that what they are given is a service, which is a good thing. I want to commend the police, to adopt that. Okay, so we have the gender desk, and, much as that desk is there, we see that there's always a need to train and retrain our police officers. I know that a lot is going into training, but, it's something that should be continuous. It should never stop. We should always continue to train police officers because things change, and then also they should be equipped, with every method that they need in investigating crimes that come under gender-based violence. For example, talk about our forensics. I wish it could have been something much more than it is, and it could be, so we could work on that and see how we can help the process and then help our women in standing up for their rights. So I've talked about the different forms of gender-based violence. I also want to mention that the Administration of Criminal Justice Act that has been adopted in some of the states as a law is very pertinent to mention, that it deals with a lot of different instances where, going to court, of course, litigating has its own ups and downs. It's not an easy place, especially for a victim to find themselves in. When you have to recount the incident, sometimes in the presence of strangers in open court, and any number of people could be there sitting, it's very embarrassing for the victim. It also allows for, how will I say now? I'm trying to think of the word to use now. When people judge you for something that happened to you and it's not even your fault, they label them. And that is really, really sad, because a lot of people will rather keep away from going to court because they have this fear of being stigmatized. So when this is an issue, and then you can have these issues dealt with in privacy with the perpetrator and the victim facing each other, of course, together with other members of maybe a panel, and then the perpetrator can actually see and understand what it is he has done wrong and take, or accept the blame for his action. And then they can have some resolution, because not all cases really should end in litigation. Of course not. Sometimes it's better to resolve. Sometimes something as a simple apology is enough. Sometimes restitution in the sense of making some payments, because sometimes when these actions are perpetrated, the victim might incur some injury and then go to the hospital and incur some expenses looking after themselves. Now, if they have some monetary compensation, that might be able to suffice, or assuage that victim's feelings. So that is an option. Of course, the plea bargain system also allows for the perpetrator to agree to a lesser offense, because sometimes you can even go through the whole hog of litigation and you can have some technicalities that will not even allow you to come out successful as a prosecutor. So the person who perpetrated this act, or whatever act it may be, might just walk away without having any punishment or any, how will I say now, anything to discourage him, from conducting himself in that manner anymore in future. And that is a loss, because if you don't prove the essences or essentials or the ingredients of the offense, then the perpetrator doesn't get to be found guilty. And of course, the law presumes everyone innocent until proven guilty, and then the perpetrator walks away, and that is a bad thing. Now, if the perpetrator can agree to a lesser offense and go in for some other punishment that may be less, but still, at least he pays in some respect for the acts that he has committed. That is a success, and it will, of course, help to soothe the feelings of the person who is the victim. And of course, the court reserves the right to inform that perpetrator, even if he agrees to a lesser offense, that indeed he can be punished for a greater penalty than what he has agreed to. So now, this leads me to the point of what encourages gender-based violence really in our society. Why is it existing? Of course, we know that it's something that has existed, from the beginning of time, but why is it getting worse? Why are we taking cognizance of it? In the case of rape and other maybe indecent assault, defilement, I want to imagine that maybe the provision of the internet and other platforms like Facebook and other social media, it has made it easier for people to voice out and say what it is that is their issue, and they can make more connections with people all over the world and express themselves. So now we hear more about it. And I don't want to think that it's happening much more now than it did before. Women are becoming more vocal, they're becoming more confident, they're becoming more encouraged to speak up. And they're also, we're also having men who, of course, the he for she, that are taking their position and also speaking out against it. And so when men hear their fellow men talk like this, it is something that I want to believe will discourage, the perpetration of these crimes. But then let's go back to the family, the unit that is the substructure for every society. How do we raise our children? You will be, amazed to find out that we still have roles, gender roles in our families. We apportion a particular kind of job or housework or chore for the female children, and then another one for the male, which is not something to be encouraged, because when we do that, we allow the men grow, or the boys grow into men, believing that there are roles for women, that there are expectations that they should have for women, that they should not surpass. And it becomes a problem when they come out into the larger society, and then they have to deal with women who are contending sometimes for positions as they are, who are competent or maybe even more so than they are, and they can't stand it, and that is a problem. We need to raise secure men, men who see women as partners in progress, in advancing every interest in society, and not just people who are good for just whatever it is the man feels that is the role of a woman. That should not be encouraged. We should start from the home. And I want to use this as a point, a time to say every parent should have a rethink of how we raise our children. We should, of course, encourage our children to support each other and also be there for each other and make things better, not only in the family, but also in the larger society. That way, the men are groomed into a way that they see women as, partners. And I don't know what else I can say, but I think this is a good time to stop, and I will not leave without encouraging Fida. Of course, you're doing a very good job of helping women realize their rights and, exercise their freedoms in obtaining or achieving those rights in their lives and in everything that they engage in. I want to, you know, thank you for the work that you're doing, and then to ask you to continue. It is not easy, like Her Excellency stated. It's a risky place to be in, but you have to be balanced, really. And I'm not saying that you should show any form of favoritism towards the woman, but you look at the cases that are presented before you. And I know it will not be easy, but I believe that God will guide you in all that you do. And all of us should be encouraged to continue in this respect to advance the interest of women, because when our women are happy, when they're settled, It makes for balance in the home, and it also helps with a raising of our children, which of course is, I will say, the not the exclusive preserve really of women or mothers and the family, but women are natural nurturers, and we are the ones that a lot is in our hands in raising the next generation, and we should not fail. Men do have their part, yes, but the women are the ones that are closer to the children. And so we can make a difference because we bond with them more after carrying them all that time, delivering them, engaging in breastfeeding, and also, all those communication from childhood. It has an impact, and a lot is in our hands. We can actually make a difference, and every woman should be encouraged to continue to do that which, God has placed in our hands and raise the next generation that should be better than our generation. And of course, it should keep getting better. So thank you, Fida, for this time. Thank you for your attention, all the participants. And I pray that God blesses all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Honorable Justice Suzette Yesom Wike from River State. Let me just say that technology is playing a lot of all kinds of games today, but I'm back. I'm happy to be back as your moderator. And I would say that, Your Excellency, I came in and out, during your discussion, but I'm happy to note that there are some issues that you have raised which should be our take home or part of our take home from this discussion. We're speaking to the fact that we need to have an aggressive advocacy for women to understand their rights so that they can exercise their rights when they need to, especially when they are violated. That I agree with you. And the chat box is actually speaking to a lot, this robust presentation from both our excellencies, as I would like to address them. You're saying aggressive advocacy is needed. We saw Fida. There's so much for all of us to do together with you. And I can also hear someone talking here saying about religion. Well, religion has always been identified as one of those areas where we can use plus, or sometimes the minuses also can be addressed. But moving forward, we are speaking to sustainability in containing gender-based violence in Nigeria. I'd like quickly to bring on our next speaker. I like the fact that she has seen it all from the perspective of the limitations of women in terms of addressing the issue of gender-based violence. So, and we know that funding plays a lot in terms of even being able to pay for lawyers, but even for women to be able to fund litigation against a perpetrator is one thing that is very limiting. And so a lot of people would rather stay home and suffer in silence. But let's hear from the perspective of a fundraiser. What are the issues there that we need us to, as a people, or as women, or as he for she, as government, and indeed all of us together, how we can pull resources together to ensure that victims, at least, who dare to speak out, who seek for a redress in terms of using the legal framework, can honestly afford it if there is no feeder around to give gratis. I'd like to call on my sister, whom is doing so much at the Ford Foundation, heading the gender desk. And Funke Barua is very, very familiar with the topic we're speaking today. She is an active voice in what is happening around gender-based violence. I'd like to bring you on now, and you have 15 minutes, and I'll be counting from now. Funke, you will have the microphone. Hello, my sister, Funke. Funke Barua of Ford Foundation. I guess we're having a lot of issue with transition on this new order that we have. But please, is Funke there?
I can see Emma. I think we've lost her.
Okay. Okay, so do we have the DCP in charge of gender desk? And I think Her Excellency alluded to that desk in the presentation that we just listened to.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much, DCP. Margaret, you're welcome. Please continue.
Mrs. Her Excellency, Honorable Justice Eberechi Wike, the country Vice President of Fida, Rhoda Tayodin, pardon me, I don't know if I pronounced that well. All the speakers here present. I think I'm okay.
You are on, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the journey so far from the police angle. We wish to intimate all of us about what we've been doing in the gender unit so far. The Nigerian Police Gender and Children Unit was set up in the year 2012 due to the predominance of sexual gender-based violence, SGBV, and violence against children in the country. The unit is saddled with the following responsibilities: advise the Inspector General of Police on gender-based violence and violence against children within and outside Nigeria. Awareness police commands on how to respond to SGBV and violence against children. Thorough investigation and prosecution of cases involving women and children. Collation of SGBV cases and counseling and reorientating victims. Maintenance of database of perpetrators of SGBV. Uses of technical platform to receive and respond to SGBV through online reporting. Interfacing and coordinating the activities of similar units at zonal and state level. Effective partnership with stakeholders, NGOs, doing various works of SGBV cases. Full enforcement and implementation of government policies / law on SGBV. Our achievements so far in the unit. At inception, the unit embarked on campaign against SGBV, encouraging the populace, especially the survivors, to break the culture of silence and contact the police whenever the need arises. In furtherance to achieving her goal, the Nigerian Police Force went into partnership with Ford Foundation in the year 2014 to fight and comb the menace of SGBV in the year 2016. Collaborated with UNICEF in ensuring child protection in Nigeria. Platform for reporting cases of SGBV. It's high. The platform includes the Nigerian Police Gender website, www.fciidgender.org. www.fcigid.gov.net. I take that again. The Nigerian Police Gender website, www.fciigender.net. Gender Twitter handle at FIBGender. The Twitter handle is at FIBGender. While our email address is gender@fib.gov.ng. Our email address is gender@fib.gov.ng. And the phone numbers that we could call to report cases involving gender-based violence cases are 0805 416 7771. 0805 416 7771 and 078 528 6278. 078 528 6278. Baseline assessment and mapping exercise of existing specialized decks in the 11 pilot states and headquarters were carried out. Lagos State Command, FCT, Benue, Anambra, Katsina, Bayelsa, Imo, Cross River, Osun, Gombe, Adamawa. All these states were included in the assessment. And the findings of the entire mapping exercise necessitated an urgent post-mapping and consultation at governmental risk societies look at or analyze the standard operating of Jesus. Nigerian police was also commissioned police officers, including criminal platform, Benue and FCT on child justice were sensitized. So far, the total number of 61 senior officers from Assistant Commissioner of Police to Deputy Inspector General of Police were sensitized by the unit, also including addition of combined participants numbering at about 700 police state commands. We trained or we sensitized rather one Deputy Inspector General of Police, one 12 CPs, 9 DCs, ACPs, and the various states mentioned. Successful capacity training and development of about 961 gender desk officers and other service police officers on how to best handle children-related cases, cutting across the FCT command, was also carried out. And the statistics. I'll give you the statistics in a minute. Oh, sorry.
DCP, please, your time is fast spent.
Yes, total cases reported over the period was about 3,150, about 600 convictions, while achievements so far. With the assistance of UNICEF Nigeria, the unit constructed a specialized children unit at Maitama with purpose of addressing cases of involving children. The Inspector General of Police approved the new standard operating procedures in order to guide the operation of the police officers in addressing the cases of violence against children in Nigeria, and inclusion of training package on handling children cases. The Nigeria training curriculum to be used in delivering specialized children training in all in-service police officers, cadets, and recruits on training in order to enhance their skills to effectively handle children's cases. Recently, the Inspector General of Police approved creation of gender desk offices in all our higher institutions of learning to curtail the trend of sex for grade. The members of the unit also embarked on campaign awareness to satellite towns and slums around Abuja on every Friday to sensitize the public to report cases of SGBV, where they are mandated to wear dedicated t-shirts with inscription, "Say no to sexual and gender-based violence." Creation of WhatsApp group for all gender officers across the commands. Other cases, including most especially during the through effective coordination of the gender unit across the state and the city. The unit has also been able to gather statistics of reported cases of gender-based violence, which are the statistics I just read out now. In February, the unit, in partnership with the LCFD, I'm running up the unit, in February, the unit, in partnership with Embassy of the United States of America, trained police officers in the FCT on how to handle gender violence cases. Training and retraining police officers and protection of justice in the local government areas across Sudan also carried out. And this allows organized workshop capacity building of desk officers and stakeholders in FCT through Niger and Gombe. The unit in partnership with this organized a workshop capacity building gender textiles on protection institution management was an effective case management system for violence against children prevention and response October. So in November, we said the unit produced the 500 copies of crime diaries, specifically for involving children onward distribution to all offices. Clean Foundation, in conjunction with him, also donated 9 note tablets.
I might just have to, DCP Margaret, I might have to stop you. DCP Margaret, can you hear me, ma'am? I might have to stop you because your audio is not getting any better. But yes. Please, can you share?
I would also like to seize this opportunity to to all our excellencies to try and assist the Nigerian police in training officers across the state. Hello.
Thank you very much. I can hear a bit of that. DCP, you are appealing to their excellencies who are present and participating in this all-important webinar to continue to assist the police force. I think, Your Excellency, we know that the police force is it's very vital to ending gender-based violence in every form. And so we hope that please share those vital information that you've reeled out, particularly those telephone numbers. We need to have them as part of advocacy material as we go around to speak to, to advocate for victims or would-be victims. I want to thank you very much, DCP Margaret Ochala, for your time. We will go now straight to the next speaker. And let me also apologize on behalf of Fida for the very terrible network problems challenges really that we've heard this evening. However, we will continue with this conversation, and as I will invite the DCVP Fida Nigeria, Barrister Amina S. Agbaje. You have the floor next, please, ma'am, and you are going to be speaking from an NGO perspective. Our next speaker is the Deputy Country Vice President. Thank you. Yes, Amina, thank you for oranging our world as it is.
Thank you, Antimoji, the Country Vice President, Fida Nigeria, Your Excellency, Relubisi Fayemi, Your Excellency, Honorable Justice.
Sorry to interrupt you.
You
need to put off one of your devices. So because we'll keep having the echo back.
Yeah, because I was losing track. Okay. All right, sorry for that interruption. I think I'll just quickly start again. The Country Vice President, Fida Nigeria, Your Excellency Irelu Bisi Fayemi, Your Excellency Honorable Justice Suzette Nwike, DCVP, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Margaret Ochala, our dear Funke Barua, Fida members across our various branches, good evening. Our topic says a stakeholders appraisal of the journey to end gender-based violence in Nigeria. Let me begin by saying that to end gender-based violence in Nigeria is to forget that gender-based violence manifests in various forms, some of which may not have been contemplated at the moment. As COVID has taught us, the twin pandemic called gender-based violence is an ever-changing phenomenon. Even the Scandinavian nations, such as Sweden, Finland, that are high up in the gender equality index, cannot say they have ended gender-based violence. But they can speak to reducing the incidences of gender-based violence in their countries. Therefore, to know if we are on the right track towards reducing gender-based violence in Nigeria, one can attempt to undertake a tri-sector mapping of initiatives. And to commence mapping of these initiatives, I will start, I have categorized them in 3 phases. Number 1 is the government. Number 2 is the development partners. And number 3 is civil society organizations. Let me begin by highlighting some of the initiatives that the government has undertaken. First, I would like to say that the Office of the Vice President in 1 year set up sexual assault referral centers in 18 states, including the FCT. The Nigerian Governors' Wives Association on ending gender-based violence, which Her Excellency Irelu Bisi Fayemi, who is with us on this platform, is the chair. They have recently developed their implementation plan on ending gender-based violence. This is to complement and ensure coordination of ongoing initiatives, such as the Pikin No Go Die Again in Edo State, Raise Foundation in Niger, and Ekiti Shelters, and so on and so forth. The Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, at every opportunity they have, they keep on re-echoing, they keep on re-emphasizing, they keep on repeating commitments in tackling gender-based violence. And we at this point, we must also recognize the efforts of the Nigerian Governors Forum that declared a state of emergency. On the 20th, they declared a state of emergency on gender-based violence on the 20th of June, 2020. These are some of the initiatives that the government has put in place to demonstrate, to show that Nigeria is on the journey of ending gender-based violence. The second one I'd like to speak to is the initiative of development partners. Over the recent years, especially as social media provided us the opportunity of coming in contact with cases that are totally nerve-wracking, we have seen the move by a lot of development partners to commit funds to gender-based violence in Nigeria. Ford Foundation is at the forefront of this. And it may please our audience to know that Ekiti, Plateau, Lagos is one of the some of the states where Ford Foundation is implementing some projects by the efforts of Fida Nigeria. We have seen the move by a lot of development partners to commit funds to gender-based violence in Nigeria. The UNFPA, UNICEF can even be more striking, and even the more striking one is the Spotlight Initiative that started early this year or maybe late last year. The Spotlight Initiative is the EU fund that is being managed by different United Nations agencies. It is focused squarely on violence against women and girls. Either they are looking at mobilizing movement around it or documenting properly initiatives or success stories. It is a huge fund that women-led organizations are able to tap into to begin to work on the issues of gender-based violence in Nigeria. Fida is one of the major partners that is implementing the Spotlight Initiative in 6 states. DFID is one of the big funders of anything gender-related, basically. At least these two partners are big on gender-based violence. With the interest of development partners building and increasing around these issues, you are likely to find women-led organizations able to access grants to work on issues of gender-based violence in Nigeria. The challenge that we have that Fida has noticed in that arena is that it seems as though the funding is not really speaking to response as much as it is speaking to prevention. The funding are for setting up sexual assault referral centers that would respond, or the funding for setting up a support system for even the respondents, because our sisters are burning out. They are seeing pictures, they are getting stories that are giving them nightmares, and no one is taking care of their mental health. The funding is almost nil in this regard. The kind of funding that we see is that of advocacy visits, do sensitization, create awareness, without so much going into recruitment of psychologists to support people, going into doctors and nurses. All this encompasses solid response mechanisms, and unfortunately, funding hasn't been going into that. It's only DFID that is able to do that with the Mirabel Center in Lagos, which they tried out, and I think the fund ran out because the project closed down. We need to look at funding for responses and not just funding for prevention, because gender-based violence is happening in Nigeria everywhere, whether we're trying to prevent it or not. Now, I'll talk about the initiative of the civil society organizations, and this is where you have organizations like the media, the CSO, Fida, Nigerian Women Traders Association, Form 1, and other organizations. To say the truth, kudos must be given to civil society organizations because they have stepped in the role of government, even when government failed, ensuring that response is provided, even when they do not have funds. You have organizations like Fida that is solely reliant on membership dues, still being called upon every day to provide responses to women. And Fida is unable to shy away from that despite not really getting huge funds to be able to do this. Perhaps the ones that will need more support will be the media in terms of reporting, in terms of coverage, in terms of reportage, so that the focus can be more on the perpetrator than on the victim of gender-based violence. Of course, the religious-based women organizations, such like Form 1, such as Christian Women Association, have also been trying their best. But for this journey to end gender-based violence, they need to also divorce themselves to a large extent from the usual rhetorics, from the usual religious rhetorics of it is well, God will change him, inshallah, pray, to the rhetoric of diligent prosecution, to the diligence, to the rhetoric of low tolerance for impunity, and of course, ensuring that the wishes of the survivors are respected. Because that is one thing that a lot of us do not talk about. There is a recent case about a woman that did a video that she's the wife of a channel's reporter. His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Benue State, Samuel Otom, has stepped in, and people are still saying that he will kill her one day. We need to respect our women's choices, but there is a caveat to this, and the caveat is that we must ensure that they are well informed and educated, and that there will be a space of no judgment where they can always run back to when they realize that the decision they made in the heat of the incident may not have been the best one. That needs to be done by religious-based organizations. I think maybe what is important to the CSOs is that we should have a more or a greater coordination and also a lot of thinking without the box to ensure that we are actually reaching the people that we intend to serve. And in conclusion, when you look at the Nigerian space, you will almost want to say that an appraisal of the journey shows that we are right on track towards reducing the incidences of gender-based violence. We know that even though we are right on track, some things need to be in place for us not to lose track on the pursuit of the journey to ending gender-based violence in Nigeria. What are those things? Number one, all states in Nigeria should ensure enactment of relevant legal framework and also ensure the enforcement of laws in all our states in Nigeria. Number two, full funding for organizations that are working on these areas, whether by funders, organizations like Fida, whether like by funders or by the government itself. The government, the third one would be that the government needs the government should not allow the issues of gender-based violence to fall off the radar. The more the government talks about it, the more likely civil society organizations like Fida are going to get funding from funders or the government itself, because development partners are picking the body language of the government to ensure that the development partners themselves are meeting the needs of government. This is really important, as we need to keep talking about breaking the culture of silence, demystifying the whole air about gender-based violence so that people can speak out and get help. Finally, an appraisal of the journey to end gender-based violence in Nigeria shows that we are moving towards the right direction, but more, of course, still needs to be done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, more still needs to be done, especially when we look at all the areas or all the recommendations that you've made within the ambit of enforcement of law. There's VAB. Only a few states have domesticated it. We have every state domesticated VAB law. There's also the need that you emphasized funding particularly CSOs and other units like Fida that are helping to mitigate the impact of GBV. We also must continue, the conversation must continue. And particularly, I would like to stress that it must continue, because by the end of tomorrow, it will be 16 days of activism, of painting the world orange, as it were, and giving visibility to the ills of GBV. But then again, that shouldn't be the end. The conversation must continue. Thank you very much, my sister Amina Agbaje, for all that recommendations, and of course, saying that we shouldn't sweep GBV under the carpet. The incidents in Benue State should be one that should be revisited and ensure that justice is done, because until, of course, perpetrators are brought to book, then we'll continue to have issues like that swept under the carpet. I do hope that the survivor in Benue State will have all the psychological interventions that is needed to continue, if she likes it, in that relationship. But more than anything else, I think you also spoke strongly to the fact that we need more experts for the well-being of survivors. If we check the statistics, although we don't have a lot of them in Nigeria, we'll find that a lot of victims are suffering from some measure of mental illness as a result of what they've gone through, and they need intervention so as to be able to get their lives back and be able to contribute to the growth and development of Nigeria. Having said that, I think it's time for question and answers. And the chat room is very vibrant. I would want to know how we want to take the questions and answers. Is it that you put your questions in the chat room? And if you have any specific, questions, if you have any specific questions for any of our resource persons, their excellencies, I hope they are still very much around with us. You'll be, please ask your question, be precise, so that we really can enjoy the next 15 minutes of interaction. If I can read quickly from the chat room, it says that we need more hands on deck and more support to NGOs working in this area. Great statement there. And we have a lot of grassroots advocates in Ekiti, which is one way to go. A lot of advocacy remains in the city, while the rural area citizens don't know what to do. Thank you, Ekiti State, for setting the pace. I wonder if Her Excellency is still with us, so that she can actually maybe give us more insight on how you have been able to achieve advocacy at that level.
I'm still here, Auntie Moji. Do you want me to go ahead now?
Yes, please. Go ahead, please.
Right. Well, it has been a concern that a lot of things happen in capital cities. First of all, thank you to all those who spoke after me. Her Excellency Suzette Wike, the DCP, right? And Sister Amina Agbaje, thank you very much for your comments. It's been a concern of ours that a lot of things happen in the capital cities, like they do everywhere else. And people who need resources in rural areas or areas outside of the capital, they don't get to enjoy the facilities. So what we've done in Ekiti State is we've engaged through the Gender-Based Violence Management Committee that I chair, we've engaged the local government chairman, and we have an agreement because the Commissioner for Local Government is represented on the GBV committee. So we have an agreement with them that they'll make gender-based violence responses part of their priority at local government level. And then with regards to the spouses of local government officials, 2 weeks ago, I inaugurated GBV committees at local government level. So the spouses of the chairman are responsible for organizing these committees in their different local governments, and they have to involve the wives of the traditional rulers, they have to involve clergy, they have to involve the market women and men. And we also made sure that every local government has a representative from Fida, because we knew that there might be cases that need expert advice with regards to what needs to be done. So we made sure that there's a Fida member in all the GBV committees at local government level. So that is work in progress. And apart from having a sexual assault referral center in the capital city, we are also targeting 2 additional ones over the next 6 months. We have 3 senatorial zones, so we want to have 2 additional stacks in the 2 other senatorial zones. They won't be as big and fancy as the one we have in the capital city, but they'll be functional. But we insist that every local government must have a shelter or a safe house. We have a large transit home in the capital city now, thanks to the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on SDGs. Sister Amina Agbaje, you need to put that in your notes as well. Thanks to the Office of the Special Advisor on SDGs, we have a 208-bed transit home for women and girls, plus a vocational center. So apart from that in Ado Ekiti, we are insisting that there should be a shelter, no matter how basic, in every local government, so that if there's a woman in distress, she can be taken care of in her local government immediately. But I'd like to quickly speak to 1 or 2 things I heard from what other speakers have said. The lady from the police said that we need to assist the police force. That's very important. I'm pleased to inform you that in Ekiti, recently, the Gender-Based Violence Management Committee donated a vehicle to the Juvenile and the Juvenile and Women's Committee of the Police Command. We gave them a vehicle, we gave them laptops and printers and other consumables. So you can harass other state governments and tell them that other places like Ekiti have supported the police in that way. With regards to the issue of funding that Sister Amina was talking about, what we have experienced in Ekiti State is, even though we have done a lot of work around GBV, there's this Yoruba proverb that if there is a dog that is the village favorite, everybody loves the dog, everybody owns the dog, that dog is likely to go hungry. Because everyone will tell the next person, oh, I don't need to feed the dog because Mama Kuti has fed him, or Mama Felicia has fed him, or Mama Sarah has fed him, and then the dog goes hungry. In that case, Ekiti State, even though we do all this great work, there are no donors banging down our doors because there's the assumption that, well, Ekiti can get things done. So we too would like to be supported by donor partners. We recently had a really good conversation with the Ford Foundation, and they're going to start funding us. But what we've done in Ekiti, which we hope other state governments will replicate, is we have taken responsibility. So what that means is all the things we have done up to now, setting up the Sexual Assault Referral Center, ensuring that we have an effective response throughout the state. It has been as a result of ensuring that there's effective budgeting by all the ministries, development, and agencies who are responsible. As I said on the panel this morning, maybe it's because I'm a professional fundraiser. I've fundraised most of my life in civil society sectors. So I know how to follow the money. As a first lady, I might not have a budget for my office, but I know where to find it for the work that needs to be done. And so I know how to knock on the doors of Women Affairs and ask them, what have you put in your budget for 2021 for GBV? Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Information, even Ministry of Agriculture, Commissioner for Agri. How many agri projects can you bring the way of women next year so that our women can have a livelihood? We have the Microcredit and Enterprise Development Agency. We have a great partnership with them as well because they've helped empower a lot of our women. So these are the ways in which we can ensure that there's funding available, even from the state governments, from the little the states have, before donors then step in to support what they can.
Thank you so very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for you've opened up all the lines where one can actually work towards having sustainability in fighting this hydra-headed monster that we are dealing with, GBV. And I think it's important too, and kudos to you, Your Excellency, that you have this happening at the rural areas, at the local government, at that level, because oftentimes we do forget that they also bear the same burden that we do at the rural level. Let me just say here, another question is coming in for you, and it says, my question to Her Excellency Erelubisi Fayemi, in your presentation, you identified political will as a big problem and mentioned the inaction on the part of your state between the end of your first time in office up now. You have done so much for GBV. What are your concerns about the continuity of these efforts after you leave office? Very important. Yes, please.
Thank you, Auntie Moji. Thank you. Yes. Well, I really am concerned because it was really not something, let me just say, it was one of the most painful experiences I've ever gone through. To come back after 4 years and to realize that a lot of things that have been done, particularly with regards to the upliftment of women and putting certain things in place, that it was as if nothing had happened. People even hid files as if to cover tracks, so there'll be no trace of what had been done, so they will not be accused of having colluded with the most recent administration. It's one of the reasons why His Excellency, our governor, worked with the State House of Assembly to pass a transition law in the state. So now in Ekiti State, we have a transition law which makes it mandatory for incoming administrations to continue projects that have been started by the administrations they're inheriting from. Maybe you might not want to take on board every single thing, but it's not as if you're going to be starting as if there's a tabula rasa, there's absolutely nothing in place. So what we are doing differently this time is to ensure that the gender-based violence response mechanism is a strong one with all those agencies I've spoken about, that we build the capacity of the civil servants, that we have more gender specialists amongst them. And just recently, because our new head of service is a woman and she gets everything that needs to be done, we had a conversation and now we have this partnership with the Gender Studies Center at Ekiti State University. There's a new program that's going to start in January, a postgraduate program that will enable some of our civil servants, male and female, to go and acquire more knowledge and information in gender studies and gender mainstreaming. So hopefully if we have more people who are committed to the values and to the principles of gender equality and women's rights, we will see more sustainability within those agencies. And then, you know, I said earlier that we encourage the civil society organizations to start a network. It's precisely for this sustainability reasons, because we know that whatever happens, they will be there to ensure that they hold the government of the day accountable. They have the knowledge, the information, the skills, the institutional memory, and they will be able to ensure that this work continues. And of course, the women in the state, those who are going to be beneficiaries of all these programs. If these programs are important to them, they will continue to fight for them and hold the government accountable.
Well, thank you again, Irelu. I think she has been very explicit in answering a lot of the questions that are coming up in the chat room. And I know for sure that some that has not been discussed or handled would still get replies, you know, from her, even as this conversation continues. The thing about it is sustainability. It is not that she's there today and after 4 years of her husband's tenure, it goes under the carpet. She's insisting and she's deliberate about it, that it is a collective responsibility across board for us to end gender violence in Nigeria. Another question I'd quickly like us to address to before we go to the launch of the data collection portal is some people have asked who, for the police, the gender desk police DCP Margaret, to please let us know who are the contact persons in all the states where you have your desk working. That is, people want to know who to go to for assistance, because we all, I think it's a consensus here that the police is very, very important to ending gender violence in Nigeria. Do we have the DCP on for her to please let us know?
Yes, thank you, moderator. Well, we have our gender desk offices across the 36 states, and we have officers in charge of those offices, the gender desk. So, but I will roll out the numbers that we can reach them through Fida, because I cannot lay my hands on them.
Thank you very much, DCP. I'm even happy. Yes. I'm happy that we want your soft copy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we would like your soft copy because
I gave for the FCT command for first gender unit, so they can also reach me on those numbers. The 08054 167771 and 0708 52 86278. These are our hotlines that they can call. And
thank you very much. Can you put those numbers, ma'am? Can you put those numbers in the chat box so that people can actually get that, and include it also in the copy of your presentation, because most of the times you had audio challenges, you know, when you had your presentation.
Okay.
Well, the hotlines, and of course, again, ma'am, would also insist and ask and request that you please send us the names of the officers to contact in all the states, so it makes it a lot easier.
I will definitely do that. But since I really want to say thank you to Her Excellency for the wonderful job she's doing and the support she's giving to our police officers over there in Ekiti. And I want to extend, I'm an Oliver Twist that will always want some more, to extend my gratitude to her and to tell her that I will wish to come and visit her and pay a courtesy visit. I don't know if that will be granted here.
Thank you, DCP. But some of your officers are naughty. Those who are far away from where we can see them in the urban areas, in the remote rural areas, some of them are naughty.
They are very, very naughty, and that's what I'm coming to discuss with you, ma. I know the challenges we are having.
Yes, and Thank you very much. I have to butt in here. I sincerely hope that we'll be able, if any of my colleagues are here, we'll be able to give more visibility to what Ekiti State is doing, because that would help other states in and encourage them to do much more. Erelu, I would, at some point, yes, I'm going to also ask that, would invite you on several programs. I'm going to be discussing with Nawaj as soon as we leave here, and see how we can, the media can actually amplify all that Ekiti State is doing. And I always want to pray for women that God will continue to grant you strength and wisdom to navigate this milestone, as it were, that you are giving to Nigerians, particularly people in your position, how they can use their good offices to end gender-based violence in Nigeria. Now, I will just take two more comments, because this is coming from Shirley. There's need for police to have institutionalized lines. The challenge that every officer go away with their lines. Each time this happens, this networking, you start all over again. I think it's important that, maybe you have somebody that, one can always go to and identify with, like we identify with you. She has the hotlines for, I think for Abuja, it's in the chat box. Please get those lines and use them accordingly. Quickly, we'll move on now, and thank you very much for the interaction in the chat box. This will continue, I'm sure, as we continue with the next line on the agenda, which is the launch of the data collection portal by the National Secretary Fida, Evelyn Membere Asimie. National Secretary Evelyn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Auntie Moji. I want to once again acknowledge the presence of Your Excellencies here present, resource persons, friends of Fida. I can see our international secretaries in the meeting room. We have other international officers. I think I saw the RVP too, Mrs. Awomolo, SAN. Well, thank you so much for being here. All Milots here present. For us in Fida, Nigeria, this is a special occasion for us because just like we've had from our various speakers, the need to have data cannot be overemphasized. It has been one of the setbacks we've observed in Fida work, in our Fida work. It's even more embarrassing when we are asked by international bodies to produce the data of the cases we've handled over time. And so we have looked at this necessity, and very recently, without waiting for the funding of anybody, Fida Nigeria Executive Committee decided to fund the production of a portal that will be domiciled in our website. So it's something that anyone that visits our website can access to see the cases we have reported over time. So the data collection portal has its own website link, which is what you can see on the screen right now. It's a www.fidadatacollection.com. But then it's also domiciled in our website, our mother website. So immediately an officer does the reporting and fits in the data of the case handled, you find it immediately transit into our website. So we have named it the Fida Nigeria Case Management Data Collection Tool. It's a form to be filled basically by our officers at the various branches. We're glad to announce that we have Fida in 36, we have 36 branches, which covers all the states of the Federation. And from our operation, our structure, the vice chairpersons of our various branches man our litigation and what we call the ADRU and litigation committees. And they have the responsibility to take into cognizance all the cases that come our way. Some feeder centers, we operate free legal clinics in all our branches. And these clinics, some of them operate even on a daily basis from Monday to Friday. Some have specific days. And there are branches that receive as much as 20 cases per day. So you can tell the number of reports they get in a week. And if we have this data at our disposal, like the CVP mentioned in our remarks, it will also help in funding. It will also help us to look back and say where we are and what we can do better. So this form has been created to cover all issues that we daily have to put together and present to the public. We have the status of the matter is also here, the cases and all that. And we are hopeful that we won't have to lose this data because of poor funding. Of course, you know that if you run a website, it has to be yearly paid for, and then it has to also be modified to meet the trending times. So we instead of waiting, just like Her Excellency, the wife of the governor of Ekiti said, instead of us waiting to get the international funding, we have taken the first step, and we know that our partners here will encourage us to ensure that we continue with this data collection. So on behalf of the national president, I would like to invite our international secretary. We didn't inform her, but since she's here, it will do us an honor to do the formal launch of this portal so that it is operative from today at the end of the launch. So International Secretary Mrs. Ezinwa Okarafo would please humbly request that you do the formal launch of this Fida Nigeria Case Management Collection 2 portal to be operative from today.
Your Excellencies, Erelu Fayemi, Honorable Justice Nyesowike, FIDA international officers here present, country vice president and members of FIDA Nigeria executive, FIDA Nigeria chairpersons, FIDA members, and all who are attending this program. I'd like to acknowledge your presence and thank you. It has been a most interesting session. There was just so much to pick up from each of the presentations. So let me first of all congratulate FIDA for putting such an excellent program together. Now, regarding the case management data collection tool, I can only applaud this effort. I think it is an awesome initiative because indeed, like you had pointed out, Evelyn, data was always an issue, and this just makes it easy to get the information we require for the work that we need to do. Sometimes it is people who are writing papers, academic papers, who are seeking information, and it is pretty embarrassing to talk about FIDA and all she stands for, and yet FIDA is unable to provide the data, the statistics we need, which will help drive the change that we seek. So I really, really commend FIDA Nigeria executive for this effort. I think it will go a long way in helping us. It even brings the information to our face. You know, it puts the information in our faces and helps us as we, in our individual and collective capacities, make an effort to drive the change that we have committed to and the change that we seek. So to the glory of God and for the benefit of mankind, for the benefit of the Nigerian society, for the benefit of mankind in general, and especially our stakeholders, the women and the girl child, it is my honor, my pleasure, my privilege to launch this data collection tool for use by FIDA Nigeria and indeed other organizations who would want to access it as we work together towards ensuring that we protect, we promote, we preserve and enhance the rights and interests of women and children. Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening. and all praise and glory to God. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma.
Very much. National Secretary, you still have the floor.
I'm done, Ma. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very
Auntie
much.
Auntie Moji, I greet you. I greet you, Auntie Moji. It's been a long time. God bless you.
This has been a wonderful evening, well spent. I cannot but say thank you to Erelu Bisi Fayemi, Her Excellency, wife of the Executive Governor of Ekiti State, who is also a woman in her own stand that has consistently and constantly stood for what she believes in the society. Thank you very much. I also would like to acknowledge the fact that we had with us on the First Lady of River State, Honorable Justice Suzette Wike. Thank you so much for even from that level being able to speak truth to power. Now, DCP in charge of Gender Desk, I've read from some of the inputs that we have in the chat box, how you are actually operating with zero budget. I'm sure that would when Fida puts this together, we'll be able to speak to going forward after this CVP, Fida, as well. The questions and answers, a lot is coming on now. I mean, there's so much about gratitude for what particularly our two excellencies have been able to do, spending your time with us. But most importantly, the points that have been raised, which will see our GBV has been so discussed. And of course, we know now where to go, we know where the gap. I would like now to call on the National PRO, Eliana Martins, for the closing prayer. Thank you, and thank you, Fida, for making me part of this historic meeting. I'm sure that our collaboration will continue. God bless you all. Please, PRO, you have the microphone.
I think we have lost Auntie Moji.
Okay. All right. I think we should just spend a minute in our own various beliefs to acknowledge what God has been able to make us achieve today, and also to remember victims and survivors as the struggle continues, that the Lord will continue to direct our ways and give us strength and energy and wisdom to continue to navigate this very unfortunate menace in our society. Amen. Thank you, Fida. Good night, everyone. God bless you.
Thank you, Auntie Moji. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much. I really had appreciate.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Auntie Moji. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Love you all. Night, night.
Mila Thompson, I hear your voice. Wow. Nice to hear from you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you, Actvism Day.
Take care.
Everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Here.
Oh, baby.
Bye, everyone.
I better heat water for me. I'm done with my meeting. I was actually at a meeting.
Not really.
They tell you to.
Bye.